Welcome, everyone. Welcome back to Everyday Eternal, episode number 71.
Godlike.
So, this is going to be consisting of myself, Matt Pavlik. Next is Julian.
Hey, how's it going?
Eric.
Hello.
And our special returning guest, Hans Jacob Goddik, aka HJ Kaiser.
Hi, everyone.
So, we're just going to start with our shoutouts to our new Patreons. Chris Raymond.
Panayotis Ntafoponos? Damn, why did you make me pronounce the hard name?
Trent Bowers, and of course, the Mysterious Stranger.
Mysterious stranger who apparently subscribed to the wrong Patreon, but we still very much appreciate it. Thank you very much, really.
Yes. So, Eric, what have you been playing lately?
Lately, I have been playing different formats. I've played quite a bit of Standard leading up to Grand Prix Portland, and then I've started playing some Pioneer finally. But in Legacy, my usual stuff, a little bit of Delver, a little bit of Reanimator. And yeah, those are my go-tos.
What have you played in Pioneer? Is there anything that's really good?
I played everything. My first tournament that I played was a PTQ. A friend gave me the deck the night before, and I never played the format, and I got 10th, and it was like 130 people or something like that, and I got 10th, so I was pretty happy. It was Is It Phoenix? And the deck plays Treasure Cruise, and it felt very much like like an Eternal format cantrip
Of Days
deck.
Past.
It's just well, you have Treasure Cruise, so you have your one mana draw 3, so that feels very Eternal-like. And then you have a bunch of 2-mana cantrips that kind of feed your Treasure Cruises and your Arclight Phoenixes. So I had a lot of fun with it. It felt really strong. I played it online for a little bit, and it felt really strong. And then it started to lose to some other decks that started creeping up on me, like some aggro decks. There's a ramp deck that I couldn't really beat with it very well, and a dredge deck similarly couldn't beat that one very well. So I started trying other stuff to see what felt strong. So I've kind of tried everything, and the deck that I'm liking the most right now is Black Green Delirium.
Oh, wow, that's pretty mid-range. Yeah, actually, Matt, that sounds like something you would enjoy.
You had me at Black Green Midrange. Could it splash white?
I am too new to the format to really know how to branch out into a third color on some of these decks that play one. I was kind of thinking maybe the Phoenix deck could play black, but I'm not familiar enough yet with all the mana. Basically,
Just say yes.
Yes, you could.
Good.
Have you encountered any siege rhinos in the format? I don't even know if they are legal from Counts of Trakia.
I haven't seen any, and I also don't know if it's legal.
Oh, it should be legal, right? If Treasure Cruise is legal, now that
I think it is, yeah, but I haven't seen anybody play it.
Well,
Matt,
I'm
you know
going to
your
start working on that after this podcast. Julian, what have you been playing?
Actually, I played quite a bit of Elves lately. I jumped back into it when I saw people doing well with it, and I felt like, hey, come on, let's just play it. It's always so much fun. And I played the list with Reclaimers. So I played 4 Elfish Reclaimers. And thus far, I don't want to jinx it, but I played something like 20, 25 matches, and I haven't met a single Plague Engineer yet, which is the main reason I felt so discouraged to play the deck. The first time I played it, I immediately got the 5-0. That's actually on my YouTube if you want to check it out. Overall, I'm not sure if I'm going to stick with that exact build that has been popular lately. I think I'm going to go back to at least including the Reclamation Sage again. I lost a couple of matches where I felt like that. Damn, if only I had that Reclamation Sage. And I might add some Nettle Sentinels back again, because it's actually quite hard to kill them sometimes on the turn you go off when you don't have Nettle Sentinel. But overall, if the numbers of Plague Engineers, well, if that number stays as low as it has been for me, that's going to be great. I really want to play that deck again. So that's what I've been doing.
Cool. And then Matt, what have you been playing? Well, Matt, so I've been playing a little teeny tiny bit of pre-modern, which is I don't know how big that format actually is or isn't, but basically old border only. Just been playing around with some friends locally. I was just playing a little bit of survival, a little bit of rock, and just having a little bit of nostalgia. 2003, throwing away all the 8th edition cards into the garbage. Because it was
Returning
just,
Nightmare Survival?
Exactly, just having a little good time, just enjoying it.
So what are the best creatures that you have to survival up and get into play at this point, if you only play old bordered?
Spirit of the Night is pretty good.
Oh god, dude, really? That's pretty cool. That's super badass.
Rhea Dawnbringer, so you can keep recurring all your guys. Critter
Warden
Hellion.
Force?
Yeah, Verdant Force is good. Crater Hellion is also good because you have anger. You put anger in the graveyard, right? And you have Crater Hellion comes in and like 4 damages everything, and then you swing for 6. It's quite fun. It's so bad. It's so bad.
That sounds pretty much like every Timmy and Johnny's wet dream playing like that.
It is. It reminds me of a simpler time in my life.
Oh my god, dude, that's deep. What have you actually been up to lately? You just told me about a couple of acquisitions that you've made.
I've made some personal acquisitions. Well, I mean, school's finished, training is finished, working a lot. Yeah, I mean, bought some new stuff.
Okay, let's not get into that.
I bought a piece of magic art recently. My first piece of original magic art, and that piece is from Morningtide, or is it Lorwyn? I can't remember. Pulling Teeth.
That's the most random thing you could buy. Actually, I don't know what it does. Where do you get it? Did you get it
garbage cart?
online?
I bought it from the artist, Jim Pavlik. So it's a good last name, good strong last name. No, but seriously.
Okay, so for anyone wondering, it's actually a sorcery, a colorless and a black. Clash with an opponent. If you win, target player discards 2 cards. Otherwise, that player discards a card. That's like the worst Tim Tutorage I've ever seen.
It's garbage. But again, if anyone's gonna own the card Pulling Teeth, it has to be a dentist. So
Oh, yeah, that's actually a really good point.
So I offered the artist, he was looking for a certain amount of money, and then I think he got a lot of offers, and I basically messaged him privately, and I said, I'll give you slightly more money to not auction it, and he said, okay. And I think I did just fine for a piece of original
You should just have given him like a discount on his next treatment or something.
That's what I offered him, but he's actually in Portland, so...
It's actually not that far away, right?
Yeah, that's what I thought. But anyway, so when he needs something, he'll call me.
Awesome.
So, and that's about it. Other stuff that I will not talk about on the channel. So let's go back to our special returning guest, HJ. So HJ, you were the last on the cast on episode 45, which was essentially forever ago. I think Deathrite Shaman was probably still legal, Sensei Divining Top was probably still legal, but let's go over your accolades. The first person to win 2 Legacy Eternal Weekends. You also won the North America 2017 and the EU Eternal Weekends. And you also went 12-3 in all 3 Legacy GPs this year. Suffice to say, I'm jealous. Remind us about yourself.
Yeah, okay. So maybe I can just a quick introduction. So I'm Danish. I started playing competitively, I think, probably around like 2008 or what. I played tournaments. I guess being competitive is probably not correct to say. Sort of gradually shifted to Legacy, and I've been playing mostly Legacy since I think 2012 at this stage. I work for a big multinational, which means I get to travel a lot, which is probably also why you see me attending a lot of Legacy events across both the US and Europe. So I think this year I spent 3 months in the US, 2 months in India, and the rest in Europe. And I'm heading off to China next year. Within sort of the Legacy sphere, I tend to be an expert of sort of blue fair decks. So my results have mostly been playing Delver and Miracles, and I can probably also pick up a control deck fairly comfortably. But don't ask me to play something involving Chalice or Sneak and Show or Storm or something of a Dredge. I'll probably not do less well.
I remember when you were watching me play at Bologna, and I turned around after the match was over, and I tried to explain to you something in the game, and you were just like, dude, I have no idea what's going on that part.
Yeah, I mean, so, Julian, the decks you play tend to sort of give me that itch in my finger where I really want to press a red button and just wipe the board clean, just to simplify the universe.
Yeah, I get that a lot, unfortunately.
I think I have done that against you a lot, actually.
Yeah, remember when you lost your chase to my Dryad Arbor in the Bazaar of Moxen Super Finals? I will never forget that.
I don't... So, I feel like I had actually managed to forget that until a while ago, but I don't feel like you were going to ever let me forget it.
Definitely. Especially not that now that you're the first, basically 2-time. Do we still call it the Legacy World Champion when people win Eternal Weekend, even though it's like 2 or sometimes even 3 times a year?
Yeah, we'll call it World Champion. We'll give it to you.
I actually, by the way, don't think I'm unique. I think Roland Chang actually has won 2, although that's of a slightly, if you will, longer time horizon. I'm definitely the first to do it on 2 separate continents.
Didn't he win it on in Vintage and Legacy? I think he won it in Vintage with Merfolk, unless I'm mistaken, and then he won Legacy with something else. I thought you were the first double Legacy champion, but you're not the first double Eternal Weekend champion.
That might be true. That might be the case.
Let's just let you take your trophy and, just pretend you're unique.
But speaking of your powers, how do you become how did you become as powerful as you are? I was wondering if that there's a painting of you somewhere around that's making all those misplays for you, so you don't have to. How did you accomplish all of this?
I wish. I wish. I feel like I'd probably make plenty of misplays. I would like for a painting that could make some of those misplays that I make instead of me. So I don't know. I think honestly the thing that's really, I think there's probably 2 things I would point to. I think one is that I've played a lot of Legacy historically, so I have sort of gotten to the point where I have a fairly good idea of what's happening in the format over time. But then I think honestly the big thing that's happened this year is I've just been a lot more, if you will, social in Magic than I have previously. So I've spent a lot more time networking with people, and that's resulted in the fact that I've been just playing better decks. As much as I would like to claim that I'm a unique snowflake, if I look at those sort of really 5 major tournaments I've played this year, 4 that I've done well in, I think 2 of those decks I can probably, to some extent, say that I built myself. But even those have had a lot of inspiration from other people. So I think just learning from the people around me, and trying to suck in a lot of knowledge from the people who play a lot more Magic than I do actually has probably been what's helped me break through this year.
Yeah, and speaking of inspiration, didn't you and Eric actually figure something out? I thought I saw something on Twitter where Eric was taking credit for or you were giving Eric credit for some tech, or maybe I'm totally wrong and I misunderstood.
Well, I mean, so I played Eric's deck in Bologna. So the Grixis deck that I played there, we both played to 12-3 finish, was literally me on the day before as being dissatisfied with my deck. So I asked around, I talked to a few people, and Joe Brennan pointed me to Eric and said, Eric's got a good Grixis Delver list. And Eric was nice enough to ship me that list on the Friday before the GP, and I played it. And I think a lot of the shell of that deck is what it was then, and a lot of the discussions that we had following that GP is what built into the list that I won Eternal Weekend with.
Yeah, that's what my comment was. It was reminiscing about a dinner that we had where me and HJ were discussing some of the holes in the deck, and I was telling him that I couldn't really figure out the control matchups, and I gave him kind of a stack of cards that I was considering, and he just loved the Bedlam Reveler, and that's where he came up with this genius sideboard plan, which, by the way, I was very skeptical of some of it, and I tried it. I loved the Bedlam Revelers. I switched over to those right away with you, and then I when I saw the Mystic Sanctuary in your sideboard, I was quite skeptical, but when I finally played it and played against an Oko deck, and I cast Painful Truths 7 times in 2 games, I was 100% on board with you.
That's disgusting.
That's a lot of the reaction that I've got from other Legacy players who picked up the deck, Eric. It's close to what my personal experience of playing the deck was. It's like you look at the plan, you think, this is okay, this must be decent, let's try it out. And then you just start drawing free so many times each game, and it just goes crazy.
And your dazes all say draw 3 on them? What?
It's there's Legacy is a format where there's so much card economy and there's so much exchange of resources. Like when you've drawn 6 cards, when you've Ancestral Recall twice, there are very few decks in Legacy that can beat that.
Truly amazing.
Moving on.
Let's just go about the deck list.
Yeah,
let's just
okay.
go about a couple of interesting choices for the deck list. We already talked about the Bedlam Revelers, and I really enjoyed those because when I play against a deck with like a control deck, and I see you without like a threat on the table and maybe even somewhat down on cards, and I'm sitting behind my Pyroblast and I don't even know, like Veil of Summer or what have you, I'm feeling like, okay, this diver deck is never gonna come back. But then you bring something like Bedlam Reveler into the mix, or even after sideboarding, like we talked about, Painful Truth, into well, sometimes even a third Painful Truth. I feel like this deck has a lot of grind potential. Eric already mentioned how that's the plan against control. Has that been working well for you? Like, what would you say are your toughest matchups? Like, what are you trying to dodge, and where do you feel very comfortable in playing against? I mean, that's kind of the hard question. We call the deck the Honda Civic because it's like good, reliable, and not very weak to anything. But do you see any holes that maybe people could exploit?
Oh, it's hard to say. I'm not even really sure. I think maybe I want to call back to that conversation Eric and I had about the deck, because really, I mean, we both sat there after the GP. We've both gone X3 with the deck. I was, obviously, Eric had a really strong run with it before that. Eric, you can probably speak more to that than I can. But I was generally very impressed with the deck. It felt like it beat, I think you're right in sort of calling it a Honda Civic, right? It's very consistent. It beats bad players and it beats bad decks all day long.
I like how you crush your fist on the table as you say that.
Yeah, I do. I'm kind of like, this is good. No, the decks that it has trouble with is really, it had trouble with control before we built the sideboard plan. That was, like, I got crushed by the Thomas Marr pile, played by Niklas Holtman at the GP. Like, it was not even close. It was horrible. It can have tough times against Death and Taxes, although I'm guessing with this build it's favorable, but I honestly I don't know. I haven't played enough to really be sort of certain. It's for sure a matchup I don't really want to play against. And then the card Tarmogoyf. So Bug Delver is tough because they play a ton of Tarmogoyfs and a ton of Gurmaganglers. And the games go long, and we just cannot deal with them very profitably. So I think that's
I would guess that's where Young Pyromancer comes in handy, at least to generate a ton of blockers.
Yeah, but and that's somewhat true, but I think also the nature of the Delver Mirror is you end up trading a lot of resources, and you're very low on resources. And what that means is you don't really get to run amok with Pyromancer very often. The sort of the standard thing that happens with Pyromancer is you play it and they fatal push it, or you play it and you have nothing else and you hit them for 2. So it's sort of an answer, and it can happen, but it's not. I'm not sort of, and I put more Pyromancers in there to hope to get lucky in that scenario, but it's not super ideal.
Okay, and how about the 2 Brazen Borrowers? I think that card went from maybe to an actual mainstay in the format that we see across multiple decks.
I mean, it's just been fantastic. So I played it I played Bug Delver in the US Eternal Weekend this year, which kids don't do that at home in Red and 6 beta. I would not recommend that deck. But the Brazen Borrowers were very, very impressive. So that tech was wonderful. And that was immediately one of the things that drew me to the list when Eric shipped it to me. They just do a lot of really flexible things. So we talk about it being a good deck for broad meta game. And that's where Brazen Borrow pops in, because it helps deal with chalices, ether vials, ensnaring bridges, like all of those things that as a Delver player you just cannot win against. Because you now have Brazen Borrower in your deck, you go, whoops, I have this card, and then you win. It, by the way, also is one of the reasons why I think Dark Depths is really starting to fall off of the map. I think you're probably crazy to play Dark Depths in this meta game. And the Delver decks all playing Brazen Borrower is a part of that story.
Yeah. I guess that gives you a lot of room when you not only are able to bounce the token, but once they actually reestablish it, you can also block it, so they gotta remove the Brazen Borer first a lot of times. So would you say, I guess you would say that this deck is tier 1 right now, but which other decks do you see up there? Like, what do you think are the top decks to choose from in the metagame right now? How do you see Legacy?
Yep, so if I'm sort of preparing right now, and bear in mind that I feel like the metagame is actually still very open. Like, I think this metagame is going to be in a different place in a couple of months' time.
Hashtag wide open.
Haha, yes. It's very, I mean, the metagame has not settled yet. Is Oko and Astrolabe broken? I don't know. I don't think the metagame has proven that yet. Is Grixis the best Delta deck? Probably, but we don't know, right? There's still plenty of open things. Anyways, what I'm generally, what I was trying to prepare for was really Delver, which comes in 3 variants, Blue, Red, Bug, and Grixis. Probably in order of popularity before Eternal Weekend. Grixis will probably rise after this. Then there's sort of the Oko decks, which is really, for me, it's sort of it's Miracles, and then it's the Thomas Maher 5-color check pile, I guess we should call it, given that it's the check, as well as all the sort of in-between versions of that.
You might call it the Team Seychelles pile, because it's basically playing all the colors.
Oh, it's. I think it's just. I think Thomas's approach to deck building is probably you get the 75 best cards in Legacy, and then you just adjust the mana base afterwards. It's kind of how I cube draft.
Yeah, that's actually a really good explanation for how Thomas actually arrives at the stacks, I think.
So, but it works. I think that deck is heavily underrated. Actually, it's. If I was not playing Grixis Delver, that's probably the deck I would pick up. And then, I mean, that shell really is not settled, what that Oko control shell looks like, and there's all sorts of things in between of what it can happen. But I try to think of the Miracles deck and the Thomas Maher deck as sort of the 2 polar points of that. Mm-hmm. Then there's Death and Taxes, which is not super, super popular, but is very strong. And again, it's I mean, if a good player is playing Death and Taxes, it can be hard to beat. This Graveyard combo, so Dredge and Hogak, which again are not super popular, but most of the top end of the format are really soft to it. So that can get kind of scary. And then there's the various combo decks. So that's sort of the way I segment the metagame at the moment. Again, it's open, and it's Legacy, so you're always going to see a whole bunch of different stuff as you turn up. But that's sort of what I'm trying to prepare for.
So that means I need to really do my work now to push Nick Fit up into something that you need to prepare for. I got my homework cut out for me.
I'm gonna be honest, man. I am not. I'm not expecting to face Nick Fit after round 4. At least I have not seen a build that I would expect to see after round 4.
I mean, we just had kind of Nick Fit without the bad parts in the finals of a GP, right? That's what people referred to Tristan Purcell's Buck, Oko, or Senate deck. It had a lot of Nick Fit elements. It just didn't have the Veteran Explorer accelerate. It just used straight up Gilded Goose and Noble Hyrax.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I mean, it's very interesting. I haven't played that deck, but I also haven't really played against it. I played against it once at Eternal Weekend, but I haven't really seen people picking it up. I don't know if that's because it's, this is Legacy and the deck looks a little bit foreign and they're just not picking it up, or it's because people have tried and not had success with it. I'm not exactly sure about that.
I'm guessing it's the latter. I tried it, and it was... I mean, the player who Tristan got second knows what he's doing with the deck, and it's obviously a powerful deck, but there was just some things that didn't meld with me, and so I didn't have a lot of success with it. It seemed a little bit removal light. It seemed to lean a little too heavily on Oko, and that's 3 mana, so that was my issue with it, and I wouldn't be surprised if other people had trouble, or they didn't feel like they were getting, they were crushing people. Sometimes, you try out these decks that you see in the top 8 of a GP and just crush the GP, and you go in and you like struggle to 3-2 a league with it, and you're like, well, it's not what I was looking for.
Yeah, the deck is certainly built to really abuse Oko, right? It has, I think, 8 accelerators, counting Green Sun Senate, and plays 4 Okos. And if you don't hit Oko, at least you get to hit something like, I don't know, Cursor of Krufix or something, or even Leovold. So that's something I like about the deck. I see your argument about like the lack of removal. On the other hand, you also have 4 Okos, which is somewhat kind of removal, like not exactly, of course. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of like the deck. We talked about this, I think, on a previous episode. I wouldn't mind seeing more of the deck. I think it's a pretty healthy deck to have around. It doesn't really do anything super broken. It's just like good legacy. I say that now. I'm going to come back to the next cast and complain about how I lost to it.
But it's interesting because it's more of a Green Sun Senate deck than it's really a bug deck when you look at it, right? I mean, it has more in... I think it probably plays more like Maverick than it does a traditional bug control deck.
Yeah, fair. I mean, if you think about it, people sometimes say that Nick Fit is the next step, like the next step on the greed ladder, or maybe 2 steps up from Maverick, and this one just dials it back a little bit and adds Brainstorm and blue cards and Oko, and that, I guess that's how you arrive at that, how you arrive there.
That's probably why I struggled with it too, because I cannot do well with Maverick decks.
I'm gonna send you a donation or something. Yeah, I want to see you play. I think you actually played Maverick on stream before.
I've played it many times. It always takes forever, and I always lose a lot.
That's true. That's actually true. I noticed when I played Maverick, my matches, even like when I feel I'm playing at a very decent pace, and even when my opponents play like as a decent pace, we still struggle to finish matches. And I've been wondering and thinking about this after the GP. Like, not only did I have that one really annoying, unintentional draw in the very first match, but overall the matches tended to go really, really long. And I think it's just the nature of the beast right now with Maverick. It incentivizes opponents to use all the time they are permitted to use a lot of times, and also like it also makes you think a lot about stuff. And even if you play like a decent pace, the matches they go really long. I don't know about that. Maybe I should really try to.
I think what it is that in elves you have one attack phase where you kill them, and then you're dead.
Yeah, and compared to elves, like the elves can also play like really long games, right? But overall, elves also makes up for that by sometimes having like just 5-minute games. That's true.
That's exactly. So I think a lot more times with Maverick or a deck like it, you're just grinding out those multiple turn. It's a lot of trading back and forth, and eventually 10 turns later, that decision you made really, paid off, and that last attack finally gets them.
It also shuffles probably twice as much as any other deck.
And it's kind of the Monastery Mentor effect, right? You put Monastery Mentor in your deck, and one of your free matches is done in 10 minutes, and that leaves a hole for your the other games to take longer. I actually kind of want to drop it. I played a lot of Bug Landstill many years ago, back in this type era, and oh lord, did we have long matches versus Maverick. And that was the point where I got to routinely flash my hand at a certain point in the game and ask my opponents to scoop just to finish matches on time.
Oh, that was a good time.
2011, I want to say. That was when Metal Mischief was still around, right?
Oh.
Yeah.
No, that was a good time, because you'd go it's like late game, they crack your standstill, end of turn, Cunning Wish for Zabo's Decree, untap, Zabo's Decree them, and then you're just like, can we pack this up? Can we go home now?
Pernicious Deed versus Death and Taxes and Maverick is so satisfying.
Oh,
there's nothing like you rip up the vials, the hierarchs, the chokes, the silver libraries, whatever is on the board, it just goes away. And then you play Jason the Mind Sculptor, and you bounce the Knight of Knights, and it's so good.
Mark Vogt, the winner of the most recent GP, he's got a story to tell about that. We had the German Legacy Championships in that year, and he was in the top 8 playing that exact deck against Marius Hausmann on Maverick. And what Mark does is, he deploys the deed, but he's like, I'm not going to blow the deed right away, I'm going to do it at the end of turn, so he passes the turn. And I don't know if anyone can already sense what's going to happen, but Marius untaps. And before he moves to... No. I mean, he's got deed in play. But before Marius even moves to his draw step, in his upkeep, before Mark gets any chance to do anything, he puts Frozen Grip on the board. And Mark is like, oh.
Whoops.
And that's the story of how Marius became that German Legacy champion in 2011. Actually won 4 black bordered UCs, and on top of that, something like 500 euros, because the TO would have given him a free flight to the US to play in some Star City game, I don't know, big tournament. And he was like, no, I don't want that. I don't want to play with the Americans. I just want the money. Give me the money. And yeah, that's what Crows and Grip can do for you.
What can Crows and Grip do for you? Now, moving on to our listener questions. Question 1 from Stoneheart reads, what do you think about the future of Legacy? Will it go the way of Vintage and have proxies? Be a part of conventional tournaments? Will Wizards get their head out of their ass and eliminate the reserve list? So I guess, HJ, you can start with that question. So what do you think about the future of Legacy, and how do you feel that proxies in the reserve list will be a part of it?
I don't know. I think the participation is slowly reducing over time, which makes sense as people sort of stow away cards in their binders. But I don't think we'll ever get to a point where proxies are sort of just a conventional part of the way tournaments are done. In terms of reserve list, Wizards has had plenty of years to get rid of that thing and hasn't yet, so I somewhat doubt they're going to. I think at the end of the day, Wizards is sort of, Legacy is a format that they don't really spend a lot of time, effort, and money to support, and don't really need to. It's nice for them to have, because there's sort of an active player base that keeps the game alive. But I'm not really seeing them doing dramatic changes to it in any way, shape, or form either.
Julian?
Yeah, I agree. As much as I want the reserved list gun, and it's, I guess, the worst kept secret that a lot of people inside Wizards of the Coast also want a gun, but basically can't do anything about it. I think it would take something like a corporate change, like somebody else taking over the IP of Magic the Gathering and having like a different approach towards that, or be more ambitious with that, to really see any change with regards to the reserved list.
There was a lot of crying for it a couple of years ago, and it didn't happen then. So
I've been crying for it ever since I got into Legacy. honestly, I got into it like 2005, and the real big crying started like exactly 10 years ago in 2009. And then they had this big gathering in 2010 where they invited Menendian and Ben Bleiweiss and somebody else I always keep forgetting, but when they gathered in the Wizards HQ to discuss the reserved list, like literally almost 10 years ago. And the result was that they actually tightened the reserve list, and they closed the judge foil loophole as well.
Eric, what do you think?
I agree with what HJ and Julian said. It's kind of unfortunate, because I think Magic as a whole would be so much better without it. The Grand Prix in Bologna had like a ton of people. Considering how expensive the decks are to purchase, and there were 1,600 people at that Grand Prix, and then the Grand Prix here in Portland, which is also, reasonable destination in the US, at least, for people to want to travel to. There was only like 500 people playing Standard compared to 1,600 people playing Legacy, and the price of entry is massively different. I think that if they removed the reserve list, they could hype up Legacy GPs, and people would be really happy about playing like Legacy paper events, and then they could focus on Standard on Arena, and then people wouldn't. Well, anyway, yeah, I think it would be better for Magic as a whole. But the way things look, they're not planning to do that, and I don't see why that would change, because people have been talking about it for so many years now, and there's been no word of anything other than nope, not going to change. So probably won't.
I think this would be a good point to shout out Jeremy of Missouri MTG, who's gonna run 3 big tournaments this year to support the Legacy scene, and he's gonna do like 2 20Ks and 1 40K in Missouri. I think northern Missouri, if I'm not mistaken. Spread out over the years. The first one already sold out, but you might still be able to basically still sign up for it in February when slots open up again. And just so that people don't misunderstand, he's very well aware that he's gonna lose a ton of money on these. Like the prize payout is bigger than he's gonna take in, even if all the events sell out. So he's making this huge effort because he loves the format so much and he wants to support the community. So definitely show him some love. I've seen him getting like some shit on Twitter for whatever. Like people were like, I don't even know, they complained about the event selling out too quickly. Like, dude, this is like, he's already losing money. If he can get guaranteed attendance, the earlier the better, I say. So yeah, show him some love. He's doing a lot, like a lot. And I'm actually looking forward to hopefully flying over for the 40K next, I think summer, but the exact date has not been announced yet. So yeah, but check him out. I think he's at Missouri MTG on Twitter.
And it's not like Warhammer 40k, guys. This is 40k in Kaiser.
Thank you, Matt. Yes.
Just to make sure that no, it's amazing. So, what do I think about the future of Legacy? I think it's tough because a lot of us are aging. We're having kids.
Are we?
Some of us, not me, but some of us are, carrying on with our professional lives, and it's taking us away from playing Magic like we used to. So I think that that's going to be an interesting thing to combat, and I think same as the age of vintage players, right? We're getting older. Do I think that proxies will be conventional in tournaments? No, I don't think that'll ever be the case. I mean, my friends and I use them all the time when we're testing, but it's not going to be like a sanctioned tournament with proxies. Not going to happen. And do I think they're going to eliminate the reserve list? Fuck no, they're not. But I think that a lot of people love this format, and they want to get into it, and the magic that you get is so amazing and intricate and deep, but I just don't think it'll happen. So we just need to keep fighting the good fight and keep helping it along.
Yeah, decent Europe attendance has actually been up over the last years, I want to say. Like, this year has been amazing. I think I mentioned it on the last episode already, but seeing all those big tournaments in Italy and the Czech Republic, and also I think they got a lot of awesome tournaments in Spain that we often don't even hear about, that's giving me a lot of hope. And of course, the Danish Legacy Masters. I don't even know if that happened yet.
That was something, I'm trying to remember when. There was something earlier this year.
I mean, it's just a Death in Texas massacre, pretty much, I would guess.
There's not as much Death in Texas as you might think. Thomas doesn't always play.
Yeah, I hear sometimes he skips GPs to go to Taylor Swift concerts. I don't know. I just a rumor.
I don't know what he's doing with his life. Probably being a professional lawyer somewhere. But
So, next question, also from Stoneheart, was what does he, I'm assuming that's HJ, do in terms of tournament preparation? Any special foods he takes with him to the tournament hall? HJ?
So I'm probably going to be very boring on this question. In terms of the on-site stuff, nothing particular. I could probably do better. I guess keep eating and keep hydrating is probably roughly what I do. The older I become, the more sensitive I get to actually sleeping. So that's probably something that I try to do but don't always succeed in. I think in terms of preparation, we talked about it a little bit before, but I think this year really for me, a couple of the tournaments I actually haven't had a lot of time to prepare. So like for Niagara, I think I did a total of like 10 or 15 matches before I turned up. Atlanta, I literally was given a deck. I picked up a deck the Friday before the event and just played it. So I think I play less than what I used to. But on the other hand, I spend a lot more time talking to people who play more than I do. Just trying to figure out, what are people having success with? What does the meta game look like? What is what is my spin going to be on that? Or what part of the streams am I going to pick up on? And really try to be more hypothesis-based in the way that I approach my testing. So rather than test everything in the universe and just play a ton of Magic, put a flag down and say, okay, so I'm going to be playing either A, B, or C. And these are the particular sort of questions that I have around specific matchups or specific decks that I'm going to try and get clarified either by playing myself or, which can be just as useful, talking to other people who play to just get an idea of what works and what doesn't. So that I can get to the actual stage where, I don't just have a 60-card deck, I have a 75-card deck, and I have plans against my matchups. So I think that's probably really being more active in networking and trying to learn from other people is probably the big thing that I've done different this year that I've really felt has paid off for me.
Awesome. And is you moving to China soon? Is that any indication that you're also looking to basically complete the triple and also win Eternal Weekend Asia, if they ever announce it?
Oh, I would, I feel like I kind of have to try at this stage. So I don't know if that's going to be possible, but I will certainly try and see if I can get a trip to Japan to get to do that one. I still also have to figure out how living in China is and travel and visas and all that stuff.
Oh, it's going to be interesting, I tell you.
Yeah,
I hope I'm going to see you next year at the Beijing Olaf event.
Oh, that's going to be good. I will for sure be there.
That'd be pretty cool. I'd love to go to that. So I'll see if I can attend. In terms of preparation, I would say the biggest thing that I noticed was that there was one tournament that me and a couple friends went to, and one person got knocked out really early, and then just basically became the personal assistant of the rest of us, bringing us coffee and food, and like I'm pretty sure I did way better in that tournament than any of the others, because you're not like running to time every round and being like, ugh, I have no time to eat, ugh, I have no time to go to the bathroom. It would be like somebody would bring you coffee. Oh, look, there's a snack. Oh,
Or somebody would bring you the bathroom.
Would put the catheter in. No, just kidding. So I would just say just prepare with some snacks and some water and caffeine and maybe some Tylenol before you start.
So here's an interesting note for me that I've started really realizing, which is that I actually learn more about Magic by watching people play than I do by playing myself. Because if I'm playing myself, then I'm very sort of I'm very caught in the moment and trying to figure out, and I have a whole bunch of assumptions going into the match that I'm trying to operate on, which means that I tend to also, to a great extent, be playing on intuition rather than sort of be rationally playing out. Like, I have to make all the decisions. Whereas if I'm watching a game of Magic, then it's easier for me to sort of hone in on the important decisions. And so one of the things that I've found really, really useful is just sort of like sit down and actually spend the time to watch a good player play Magic. So if like taking Miracles as an example, which really is a deck that I've learned to play over the last 2 or 3 years, part of the way that I've learned to do that is just like watch Miracles players. I've watched Anders Thiessen play a lot of Miracles. I've watched Anurag play a lot of Miracles. I've watched a number of the others of the Miracles crew, and that to me has been super, super useful. Because that's where you start to get those experiences where you watch a good player play and they do something different than what you do. And that puts you sort of in a position of asking the question of what is going on here? What is it that I don't understand?
What's the line that I'm not seeing, right?
Exactly. Like, what is their plan, actually? So it's really interesting. I've also started to notice that so the Grixis Delver deck is a good example, right? It's a deck where the way I played with a control sideboard plan, which is the same way I used to play Team America back in the day. If you go back to episode 45 and listen to that one, you can probably learn a lot about the way I play Grixis Delver today from just listening about the way I played Team America back then. But that's not obvious to someone who just picks up the deck list out of the blue that I'm really trying to play a shadow control deck in my Delver deck. The same way that if I play Miracles, then I'm actually sometimes if I'm playing the blue-white Miracles deck, I'm actually playing a very aggressive Land of Miracles. So it looks like I'm a control strategy, but really I'm out to jam mentors. And that's also not very obvious if you haven't watched someone play the deck. That even the same 75, or maybe changing 5 or 6 cards in the 75 deck list, can enable you playing the deck in a very different manner.
I think that's part of the mastery of Legacy and something a lot of people really appreciate about the format. And that certainly took me many years to fully understand is how one of the biggest skills strategy-wise is to understand when you're supposed to switch roles in a matchup. Like, you start out being the quote-unquote control deck, but as things change, you might actually need to basically implement a change of pace because you know that you don't have inevitability anymore because of either like how the early cards traded or your position in the matchup, and realizing that and not blindly sticking to what somebody told you how to play the matchup. I think that's one of the biggest and most satisfying things that you can do in the format. And a lot of stuff like these mid-range control decks, like, well, I guess Jackpile before, but also like many builds of Miracles right now, they are somewhat kind of like that.
I mean, that's personally the decks that I tend to like and do well with is the ones that can switch roles. And I think, honestly, that's also one of the reasons why Legacy really rewards people who stick to an archetype, 1 or 2 archetypes, and really get to master it. Because there are so many matchups in Legacy that you cannot learn 8 different decks across 10 different matchups to that level of mastery. You just cannot. and you cannot, if you endlessly mess around with the way that you build your deck, you're just never going to get to that level of mastery.
I mean, another good example is the way I learned playing Black Red Reanimator from the way Eric played it. I saw it locally, and a lot of people, they basically try to mull to the nut hand and just get there on the first turn. And when I started like watching Eric play, it almost sometimes felt like he's operating like a laser and very precisely picking a spot and trying to win on turn 8 or 9, whatever. And that was like, I almost want to say that was eye-opening to me, because when the deck first came up at some Eternal Weekend in Europe, I think 2016, 17-ish, I didn't really give much credit to the deck. I thought it was like the flavor of the month, and then it's gonna be gone. But I learned that it was not, and that's part of Legacy, I guess.
I mean, Eric, you can probably comment on our match in GP Atlanta here. But I feel like that, again, that's like you probably play the deck in both extremes, one being very, very aggressively and one being very, very passively. And knowing when to do what is probably the where the mastery lies. Maybe you can comment here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it you have to know all the matchups. So I've taken kind of a different approach from what you were talking about, but mine's more of takes a lot of time, and that's just jam a ton of games. You just play like so much that you learn all the things that you can lose to in certain matchups. And so if I lose to certain things or certain things turn out to be mistakes, I learn from them, and then I just try not to do, or, then I'm not going to make that mistake. Or I see a mistake my opponent makes, and then I see that other people make that mistake all the time, and then I try and like leverage that mistake. For example, with Reanimator, using fetch lands at the wrong time against Chancellors, and then being able to use the fact that their fetch land is on the stack, so they don't have any mana to pay for your Chancellor trigger as an advantage for you, is a good example of that. But so sometimes, depending on the matchup, some matchups you're mulliganing to turn 1 because it's very unlikely they have anything that can interact with you, and if they do, well, then make them have it again next game. And then other matchups, it's very likely they have something to interact with you, so you need to sculpt a hand or leverage the information that you don't have, but you do have, and that is that they have something. And so you make them use that something. You make them use the spells that they likely have, and then you combo later based on. I mean, you just have to set it up basically. You're not like, okay, I'll just do this, and then maybe I'll draw another Entomb later. I mean, you cast other spells that trick them into using the interaction that they have, and then you combo basically.
Man, I'm never going to use my interaction against you again. This sounds scary.
Well, that's the thing, is you force the interaction.
It's fine.
You have to. You put them in a position where they have to use it, or they're also going to lose.
I guess there's also there's a corollary to when you play against Storm, right? And if you're a newbie playing against Storm, then you think, oh Lord, they're going to they're going to kill me, so I need to have my Force of Will. But what I've learned over time is Storm is always going to try and get to rest you first. So actually having a Force of Will in your opening hand against Storm is not actually very useful. I would much rather have a whole stack of Ponders, because I know they're going to duress me in the first 2 turns. So, I'm digging in for a game where they're probably going to try and kill me on turn 3 or turn 4 instead.
Yeah. Yeah, when I play Delver, it's game 1, I'm playing against Storm, I'll often ponder and see like a lightning bolt on top and just keep it, because if I'm pondering looking for exactly a Force of Will, they're going to duress it and kill me.
Great. So, Sea-Watch has the next question. What do you think about the Snow Oko Miracles decks? Or Snoko Miracles deck? Is cutting the miracle spells for more Quotals and counters reasonable? Is main deck Red Elemental Blast too greedy? Or should the deck be playing some Council's Judgments? So we'll start with Julian first.
Actually, I think those questions were all submitted to be directed straight at HJ.
HJ, what do you think about that?
Okay, so let me... I spent quite a bit of time preparing with Miracles up to TP Bologna. It was the deck I was expecting to play, actually. But was not super impressed with the performance in it. So I can speak to some things. I think the first is around Council's Judgment. So Council's Judgment is a card that I'm actively looking to not put into my Miracles deck. I generally do not like it because it's double white. It's particularly awkward when you start to play with
Astrolabe?
No, not Astrolabe. Mystic Sanctuary, which is a very powerful card in Miracles. Probably not if, coming back to the other question, you start cutting the Miracle spells. So in that case, maybe you can do it, but I never really liked Council's Judgment in Miracles. It's always been a card that we play because we have to have some answer to certain threats in our deck. But a lot of those are now answered by Oko. So to me, actually, one of the really strong things about playing Oko and Miracles nowadays is you don't have to play Council's Judgment. By the way, if you look at what I've been playing in the last two GPs, I've not been playing Council's Judgments. I've been putting Unexpectedly Absent in my deck, which I think I'm probably fairly close to the only Miracles player in the universe to do. but that's maybe also a little bit of personal style. Then there's a question around sort of main deck Red Elemental Blast. Well, Veil probably fills that role better than Red Elemental Blast, both because it actually deals with more stuff than Red Elemental Blast, but also it's way easier on the mana. So unless you're trying to kill Oko exactly, then I would not be playing red. And I think the mana in general is probably too poor for you to get away with playing red. Then there's a question around, cutting the Miracles to play Quietless and counters. Well, I think you can get a reasonable deck out of that, but here's the question. If that's what you're doing, why are you not just playing the Thomas Marr 5-color pile? Which probably does a better job of that than playing a Miracles shell. That deck really is not hurt particularly by playing 5 colors rather than 3 because of the way it's constructed. It doesn't need to hit 4 basic lands in play and avoid getting wasted to have success. And so it gets to play more colors, and because it gets to play more colors, it gets to play better spells. So if you're not playing Miracles, then why are you not just running that? Whereas if you're playing Miracles, you have to be a little more conservative around playing basics and playing colors because you actually need to put quite a lot of lands in play to be able to play your spells. I don't know that. I think that's probably my philosophy on those questions.
Okay. And then Tubo Chasse writes, how many dazes do you keep when you board in Mystic Sanctuary and Painful Truths? And do you board Mystic Sanctuary against combo?
So this is another one of those interesting questions, right? Because I keep getting asked.
Our Patreons, they have the best questions.
So I have one of my an unnamed, very strong Delver player put a post to me, who was like, and he asked me, so apart from Control, where do you board in Painful Truths? And I was sort of looking at it, I was thinking, and then his extension to that was maybe one against D&T? ? And my answer was all matchups, almost. And he was like, but surely you don't board them in against combo. I'm like, yes, I board them in against combo. Oh, okay. You wouldn't board them in against an elf deck or maverick deck, would you? I'm like, yes, I do. Yes, I bought them in against pretty much everything that's not the mirror. And that goes for both the Painful Truths and the Mystic Sanctuary. Because I'm really trying, because they tend to be good in most matchups. Actually, the sideboarding with the deck is more about what you bought out than what you bought in. And what you bought out tends to be really, I think, there's sort of a few packages. There's Wastelands and Dazes, which go out against all of the control decks, including the 5-color deck, by the way. This was a big realization to me that if you're trying to fight the 5-color deck on their lands, then you're not going to succeed because they have 20 of them, so don't even bother wastelanding them. Out with the Wastelands. Then you have the removal spells, which go out against combo. And then sometimes, and then there's the Force of Wills, which can leave in some particular circumstances, but less so than people think. And then occasionally, if you're playing very grindy against creature decks, so Death and Taxes or else, I will board out Delvers. And so really, the way I sideboard the deck the grind cards tend to come in. It's more a matter of what actually goes out in the different matchups. And in most matchups, I have a lot of stuff that I'm trying to get rid of, and so there's plenty of stuff to bring in, Sanctuary and Painful Truths.
So to go back to the question, do you always take out dazes when you bring in? I mean, always is always kind of a strong word, but do you usually take out dazes when you bring in Painful Truth and Mystic Sanctuaries?
No, not really. But I usually, again, bearing in mind that I bought in Mystic Sanctuary in all matchups and Painful in most. So I bought out, if I play against actual control, then I shave some dazes. I end up keeping 2 just because of the way the sideboard is built. With other cards, I'd rather get rid of all the wastelands when I'd get rid of a few of the dazes. You can kind of keep people honest and bounce Sanctuary with it sometimes.
Oh, that's so sweet. Oh my god, the value.
I mean, it's kind of sweet, but on the other hand, when you get to the point where you can daze with your Sanctuary, then, they're not going to let you. So usually you're just trading your daze in to draw Painful Truths, which is still fine. Like, I don't mind trading my daze for Painful Truths. But
isn't that great? I thought that was great. I was like, I want to leave in, even when I'm on the draw, I want to leave in a couple of dazes against the control decks, just because then you don't care if they counter your Painful Truths. I mean, how many times are they going to counter it?
But I mean, but they bought out their Force of Wills. I mean, and you're gonna, by the time you have Sanctuary, it's because you cast Painful Truths, and then you've shuffled with your fetch land to bring Sanctuary in play to cast Painful Truths again.
It also,
like, how are we losing this game?
So sometimes
I don't know how we're losing it.
Sometimes your painful truths will hit like a couple Delvers or something, and that's like not that good. Like a land and 2 Delvers. But if you can set those Delvers up by dazing something, and that's pretty good. Put a Painful Truth on top.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
all nice. I think that's part of the reason, by the way, why I bought out the Wastelands, because I tried to shave some of those cards, because, I mean, the grind package really only works if you make it work, which is, it's no good playing Painful Truths against your Miracles opponent if you play Painful Truths and you draw, like, a Wasteland, a Daze, and a Fetch land off of your Painful Truths. That's just not going to go very well for you.
Yeah, I would imagine this to be like really good if you side out the Wastelands, and if you eventually get to 3 mana, you might have already fetched twice or something. So you're looking at like 10, sometimes 11 lands left in a deck of, I don't know, 45 cards. So on average, it's going to give you at least 2, if not 3 spells. That's pretty insane.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you end up outgassing the all 2-for-1 deck. But I mean, yeah, like I did a lot of so a couple of funny plays from that tournament. Again, people sort of poke fun at me for the Painful Truths. Like, I played against a Maverick player who I think hit me 3 times for 1 damage, and I managed to take myself to a grand life total of 4 in that matchup.
You all by yourself?
Yes. I dealt myself that much damage, yes. I played against a depth player who played Bitter Blossom against me. And I'm sort of looking at him. I'm looking at the Bitter Blossom. He's been beating me down with like an Elvish Reclaimer. I'm sort of looking at him like, okay, I don't know how to beat this. So what am I gonna do? Okay, I'm at 5 life. I'm like, okay, guess I'm going to 1. Fetch Sanctuary, Painful Truths. I won that game. Like, that's how you win with the deck.
Magic starts with 1 life and 19 bonus life, right? So it's all good.
Hey, just draw the 3 cards and hope. It's like Jadeful Mind Sculptor, right? You put Jadeful Mind Sculptor and you brainstorm. You don't know how you're going to win the game before you brainstorm, but you're probably winning the game after you brainstorm. It's the same thing with Painful Truths. Have trust in the fact and make sure you configure your deck in a way that the cards that you draw off your Painful Truth can get you out of those painful spots.
Honestly, hearing you talk about the deck and also hearing Eric talk about the deck when we were in Bologna, I'm feeling so drawn to it right now. And that actually means something, because Grixis is by far my least favorite. Actually, it's Mardu, but Grixis is a close second. I hate anything Grixis, I hate anything Mardu. And like you guys really make me want to play that now, and that's amazing to me.
But think about this, Julian, right? First you draw 3 cards, and it feels really good. And then you do it again. And sometimes you do it again because you either draw another one or you go Bedlam Reveler.
I almost want to bring in Leyline against you.
It's like you're playing Leyline is super scary. I don't want to play against Leyline. I get crushed by Leyline because it stops Arcanist and it stops your Bedlam Reveler. Shenanigans. Like if you have Leylines on the board, you should board them in against Grixis Delver.
And you can't even get rid of them.
I mean, you can brazen borrow them, kind of. But
yeah.
The card Rest in Peace is super, super scary, and Leyline is kind of obnoxious too. Like, being an actual Delver deck is the weakest part of the deck by far. You're being very successful when you're either going crazy with Arcanist or you're going crazy with Bedlam Reveler and Painful Truths. Those are the powerful parts of the deck. It's not playing Delver and just going the distance. Like, any well-configured deck in Legacy can beat Delver of Secrets.
Except for Delver.
Well, except for the actual, Delver mirror. But,
yeah, then that's the only reason you play the actual Delver card, because of the mirror.
Well, I mean, it's a nice sort of backup strategy. Like, yeah. I've really tried removing Delver from my Delver decks, and it usually doesn't work. Using more.
I've tried to. It never works.
I mean, that's how you end up being Tomas Mar, right? I think I told the story before. When he developed Checkpile, the deck used to be a Delver deck, and he got greedier and played even crazier and more late game cards, and eventually just ended up cutting the Delvers and just was like, okay, dude, just give me all the value and the power, greatness at any cost, pretty much.
But it's interesting, Julian, because him and I were actually doing the same thing at the same time, but just going in sort of different directions with it. I think where we diverged is that he just got such a huge, grotesque love for the card Baleful Strix that sort of defined his entire deck building, which was a card that I could never really find love in my heart for, even when I cut the Delvers. And that's probably why he had more success with it back in those days than I did, to be honest.
Never thought about it like that. But moving on, we got a question from one of our Patreons, Scott Monroe. How do you feel about Chalice in an Oko format? Scott is thinking about leaving 1 in the wishboard of Bomberman and cutting the rest of the main deck entirely so he can free up more slots for 1-drops in the deck. So, HJ, do you have any thoughts about that?
So you can probably imagine that I'm very heavily biased here. Because if I'm playing Legacy, so if I'm going into a Legacy tournament, it's because, correct or not, I believe that I can win the tournament by being better than my opponents. If I don't feel like I'm better than my opponents, how am I ever going to win that tournament? So I kind of have to believe it, whether it's true or not. And if that's the case, then I want consistency. And how do I get consistency? I play Brainstorm and I play Ponder. And if I'm really good, then I play something like a Miracles deck that also plays Portent and also plays Predict or Accumulated Knowledge. So that I'm playing like 16 cantrips in my deck. And that's not consistent with playing Chalice. So I think actually you're probably in general handicapping yourself in a Legacy tournament by putting the card Chalice in your deck. Now, specifically in terms of Bomberman, it's a little difficult to judge because I don't know if Bomberman does the deck need to play Chalice to be a good deck in the first place? I honestly don't know. I've never really played a lot with Ancient Tomb decks, so it's a little hard for me to have some strong opinions on it. But I doubt Chalice is systematically weaker or stronger now than it's always been.
I think what he's getting at is that Chalice is easily turned off by Oko, so all these cantrip-heavy control decks that used to have problems with it can just get to turn 3 and basically have 3 or 4 in the deck that outright removes Chalice. So here's thinking about cutting it.
Right? I mean, if Oko is killing your Chalices and you don't believe that Chalice is good, are you then playing the right deck? Like that would be the question I would ask myself.
That's actually a really good way to think about it, I think. I actually didn't consider that. Like, because, I really like Bomberman and I want the deck to be successful, but yeah.
Yeah, maybe instead if you're like, I want to play this Chalice, there's an Oko format, maybe you just play more Blood Moons. You just Blood Moon them out of the game?
Not sold on Blood Moon.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you didn't see this, Matt, but Nicholas Hartmann, he played 5-color control to a cash finish at the GP. And in this 5-color control deck, he played Blood Moon in the sideboard. Just so you can have something against lands and a couple of other decks. Like, Blood Moon, I feel really isn't cutting it. I could be wrong, but I really think Blood Moon isn't cutting it right now.
I will tell you, by the way, that one of those 12 wins that he got was against me.
Oh, yeah. Did he out-value you?
Oh, it was horrible. That was where that match is why Eric and I had that conversation about how to beat control. Because it was like, every time I did something, he did the same thing, except his thing drew a card while it did it. Or like, killed 2 dudes, or left a planeswalker on the battlefield, or something crazy. It was horrible. It was like my entire hopes and dreams were just sinking out of my stomach as we played. I don't even remember if he crushed me with Blood Moon. He probably did that too. But it was horrible.
You sound like you have some serious PTSD.
Yeah, it was. I got to meet him in the Turtle Wing, and he was on Cloud Post, and I got to I got to crush him. So that was good. But
Redemption.
It was redemption.
Eric, you were going to have something to say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I feel like the Chalice lock combo, or not lock combo, sorry, the Chalice Stompy lock, prison style deck has been getting worse and worse for all of 2019 and probably part of 2018, and that's why we've been seeing less of it and more people going towards the combo aspect of the Chalice deck. So that's why the question is about Bomberman, and that's why the Mystic Forge deck kind of popped up. But I just feel like there's better combo decks, and that Chalice the Void and Blood Moon and all of the prison style effects just don't affect enough decks to play that as your main strategy anymore. The control decks don't care about most of the lock pieces anymore, and so you're pretty much just gunning for combo, and their sideboard is completely packed with answers to those things, and then Delver, but Delver can just daze and force will your stuff. So I feel like those decks, you're not seeing them as much for those reasons, and I think if you're really into that style of deck, I think that Bomberman is still a viable deck, and that I don't hate the idea of cutting chalices and putting in, what's the one that makes spells cost 3 more on your turn, or 1 mana spells like
Defense Grid.
Yeah, so Defense Grid, or like Scott Monroe said, 1 mana spells. So that's my thoughts on that.
I wonder if we are, as a format, are generally headed back to having these prison stompy decks as a lower tier 2, if not tier 3 thing, because I guess, Matt, you were around, right? You remember when like Dragon Stompy came up?
Yeah, I do.
Or even people played like Angel Stompy, and that was always like this cute thing that you could do, but it really, like, nobody went into a tournament thinking, oh, I need to be able to deal with Chalice of the Void. And that really only ever came up after, I want to say, like, once Miracles became a deck, because Miracles was so powerful, and like Chalice was one of the cheap ways to try and fight it. Mm-hmm. And I really feel that only ever since 2012-13 we really saw Chalice became a card that people had on their mind when they were building their deck. And before that, it really wasn't something you were thinking about almost at all. And I wonder if we're slowly going away from that. I mean, we still have like powerful decks like Eldrazi. Eldrazi has a very high floor. And for example, I think one of the reasons that Bomberman is still around is good is because it is a really, really good mentor deck. Like, I think half of the matches you win just by slamming mentor and making 2 or 3 tokens on the first turn, and the opponent doesn't have Swords to Plowshares. You get to steal wins with Chalice, but nearly not as many as you think you would. And sometimes you also like you mice to win, and that's something. But overall, yeah, I wonder if this is something that's going to happen, if the format is going to be more mid to late game focus anymore. And on top of that, but that's going to be a different episode, I wonder whether something like Natural Order Ruck is going to become a thing again. Because the last time we had something like that was like 2011 when Mental Mischief was still around. Natural Order Ruck was like one of the 3 best decks in the format. And I don't know, I'm just theory crafting here, but I could see something like, I don't know, Natural Order Ruck being good again. Because this whole Natural Order thing, it also dodges like But it doesn't really dodge whale because you still have to protect your natural order. But you also get to play your own whales, and you get to somewhat dodge pyroblast. But yeah, that's something that I haven't figured out yet. But I could see moving in that direction.
I mean, it feels like Green Sun Senate is really having a renaissance at the moment. As the card Terminal starts fading out of the meta game, then the card Green Sun Senate becomes a lot better in its various different types of shells.
Oh, that's something I'm certainly happy about. But moving on, Pair of Slacks, another one of our supporters, he's got a question. What's the most insane play somebody has ever made against you, HJ? Is that a too open question, or is there any situation you have on mind?
Oh, I mean, I've been drafting Vintage Cube the last bit of time. I've seen a lot of crazy plays made there. Someone Primeval timed me on turn 2 yesterday. That was kind of scary.
You gotta ask, in Modern or in Legacy? Or in Cube, you said, right?
Vintage Cube. Vintage Cube, yeah. I think the craziest play I've ever made was in a Vintage Cube draft was many years ago. I was playing it's like a black creature deck. He had like 5 or 6 dudes. I was about to die. I was playing the usual, I think we talked about it earlier, the just draft all the good cards and mana accelerants and make the mana work later kind of deck. And I was I'm up against the wall, and I put Enlisted Worm on this deck. And Enlisted Worm starts flipping, and Enlisted Worm flips Factor Fiction. And Factor
For those who don't know, Enlisted Worm is the one who that does Cascade, right?
Yeah, it's like a 5/5 Cascade for 6. So that card cascades into Factor Fiction. Factor Fiction flips Time Walk, which we cast. And then I cast Yorkmoth's Will, and we do all of this again. And I think I went from having like 2 cards in hand and being dead on board to my opponent having like nothing, I having an Enlisted Worm, a Bogarden Hellkite, full grip, and having had taken like 3 turns in a row. I think that's probably like the craziest thing I've ever done.
Yeah, that certainly qualifies. Moving on to the next question from Pair of Slacks. Best tip to offer for players new to the format? Like somebody coming into Legacy, probably like somebody who's got reasonable experience with competitive Magic but hasn't really played a lot of Legacy. Is there anything you would want to tell them?
Find 2 or 3 reasonably adjacent decks. So like, again, Miracles and Delver is a good example. Show and Tell, Reanimator, play 4-color Loam and Dark Depths. Something that overlaps somewhat in the play style and the types of cards that you need to get. And then watch the good players in the archetype play the deck. Watch how they sideboard, watch how they play, watch what cards they put in their deck. And just become very good at that sort of, at 2 or 3 niches. Not one deck, ideally 2 or 3 decks, because, sometimes your deck is going to be poor and sometimes it's going to be good. So you want to be able to switch, but, and by all means, feel free to go to a tournament every week with a different deck the first 10 weeks just borrow some decks just to learn what you want to specialize in. But really try and pick a specialization so that you can get to a level where you're really good at what you do.
Awesome.
I think that would be my advice.
Yeah, I think that's already pretty good advice for anyone looking to level up in the format.
I agree.
We have one last question from Max Gilmore of minmaxblog.com, and I actually put this question last because I think it's probably the deepest we have right now. But yeah, let's just go straight at it. What things do people commonly accept as true about Legacy that you believe is incorrect?
The first one I would probably point to is people bought out Force way too often in Legacy. There's this common misconception.
Oh yeah, give it to us. I want more of those.
There's this common misconception that Force of Will is a card that you should board out in fair matchups, and that fair matchups are all about grinding. But that's not necessarily the case. I mean, particularly Delver Mirrors, depending on builds, are often about who gets to resolve Tarmogoyf, for example. And Force of Will is a really important part of picking those fights. Playing Grixis Delver against 7 Taxes as an example, you want to protect one of the ways you win is by forcing Plow on Arcanist, and that requires you to have Force. There's lots of examples where Force of Will is a really powerful magic card in fair matchups. I think you need to make sure that you understand what it is when you're trying to Force of Will. If you go back to the last one I did on this podcast, you will have me raving about how I used to Force of Will Deathrite Shamans in Delver Mirrors.
I was going to bring that up.
I remember vividly beating a Shaman's Bug player who looked at me in he looked at me like I was crazy when I was on the play. I mulled to 6 and I snap forced his turn 1 Deathrite Shaman. He was on the draw and he thought I was crazy, and I won that match.
I will never forget that lesson. I remember watching you playing in Madrid in, I think, some card market tournament, and you made that play, and I think you might have actually top 8'd or won the tournament even. And when I saw you do that, I saw everybody like rolling their eyes somewhat, and I asked you about it later on, and you said like, of course, it's like the best card in the matchup. Like you called it Deathrite Shaman advantage, and you want Deathrite Shaman advantage in the matchup, and that's why you will outright force it, like without question. And
yeah, I mean, the card was just that broken.
Yeah, I feel like these are the moments where I personally leveled up as a player, where I really let go of this idea that it's like all about grinding and like, oh no, Force of Will goes out, Deathrite Shaman, whatever, we just like stall the board and then I will win somehow. But you had like this better plan, and I really like that.
I mean, again, it's like, what is your plan? What are the important cards in the matchup? And are the important cards in the matchup important enough that you're willing to Force of Will? That's the big question. Like, are you willing to 2-for-1 yourself to get rid of a very important card in the matchup? And often the answer is yes in Legacy, even in fair matchups. That's probably my big one. Couple of others. Death and Taxes. Like, people think they can beat Death and Taxes with Delver decks, but they don't properly prepare. Like, I mean, that's one of the things I really loved about the Grixis deck that Eric handed me, is there was a very clear plan for Death and Taxes. If you go back and see many of my Delver lists, I've usually been playing Force Weavers as a usual thing. You don't beat Death and Taxes by messing around. Same thing used to be the case with Miracles. Like, you need to have a solid plan if you're playing against a good player. And Death and Taxes is a lot better if you play against a good player than if you play against a bad one. Yeah. And you will usually, if you're used to playing FNMs, you're usually used to playing against Death and Taxes players that, trust me, are not Thomas Enevoldsen. But when you face Thomas Enevoldsen, then you need your sweepers. Otherwise, you are not going to win. I think the last misconception that's a sort of current occurrence is that's sort of similar to this is really sort of Hogak. I think Hogak is a very undervalued deck, probably because it's fairly, you're playing your matchup lottery a little bit with the deck. So it loses a fair amount over big tournaments. But it's super scary to play against with fair decks, and a lot of people who don't know the matchup really well think that they can just jam a couple of surgicals in their sideboard and beat Hogak. And quite frankly, if your sideboard is 3 surgical extractions and you're not playing Dreadhorde Arcanist, and maybe even if you're playing Dreadhorde Arcanist, then you've probably de facto chosen to scoop to Hogak, which can be a very fair decision, but I don't think people realize how scary that deck is.
I certainly do now after playing against Xavier basically like 6 matches, and many of them being him on Hogak. How that's really where it hit me, how dangerous that deck is and how impotent surgical extraction is against the deck. Like, what are you gonna hit? Like, even if you hit the bridges, which is sometimes the best, you will often be overrun. So yeah, I can certainly see that.
I remember, Eric, you and I had a conversation I think you were calling me crazy for putting Leyline of the Void in my Delver decks.
No, I'm with you. If you want to beat Reanimator and Hogak, you should put Leyline of the Void in your Delver sideboard. I think that's the best answer. I was just saying I was angry that you had it the night that we played, and then you top 8'd the challenge the next day without it in your sideboard.
Oh yeah, that's probably. I think maybe in terms of crazy plays, I think our match that day is the shortest match of Magic that I have ever played.
You had Leyline of the Void.
Crazy game. So the story goes, I play against Eric. This is where, knowing you're playing the player and not the deck comes in. And Eric, I think you mulligan to like 3 or something excessive. And I play a turn 1 Delver, and Eric just scoops. This is game 1. And then game 2, and so I go to sideboard, I'm like, what's Eric playing? Like, I don't know, but these ley lines are probably good, right? and Eric scoops like literally turn 0 into the ley line. The entire thing was over in 5 minutes.
Imagine if that's the final of a cheap. I guess if it's the finals, he's gonna know about your ley lines. But yeah.
What a giant pile. So, runner-up, Eternal Weekend. It's an opposition-based deck with Oko and Arkham's Astrolabe and Natural Orders and Forced Brainstorm, and then just like this plethora of lovely creatures. Gilded Geese and Noble Hierarchs. There's a Questing Beast. That rhymed. That was good. Icefang Codal, Critterhoof Behemoth, Brazen Borrower, Archon of Valor's Reach. And Teferi Time Reveler as well. Interesting. So I didn't get to see this deck being played. So, Julian, did you have any thoughts on this deck?
Yeah, this deck has. We've seen this deck quite a lot lately. For our own opposition deck, I want to say. It also top, I don't know, 32 at least, maybe even top 16, the GP in Bologna. And now HJ also faced off against it in the finals of Eternal Weekend. HJ, how did you feel about the deck? Did you know that your opponent wasn't this crazy brew?
Well, I mean, I got to see Maximilian, who was playing my list, get defeated by him.
Actually, by him, let's mention his name first, so that doesn't go under. Gaël Bailly Matre, I think. I'm very bad at French.
Yeah, we'll call him GB Maitre. We're going with GB.
Okay, you said that. But yeah, HJ, you knew you were going to face him in the finals, you mentioned?
Yeah, because I saw him dismantle Maximilian. I think it's a deck that really, like, it benefits a lot from your opponent not knowing what's going on. Like, I mean, one of the realizations where I started to sort of, when I don't feel like I really understood the matchup until really the sideboarding for the third game, which was, since I'd seen Maximilian play against it, was the 5th game of playing this matchup. When I started to realize the fact that he didn't actually have any real removal in his deck. Like, he has 2 plows in the sideboard. Which means that he cannot deal with, for example, Arcanist going crazy. I think he obviously did very well with it. I think there's something quite powerful there's inherently something powerful to Green Sun Senate. And Green Sun Senate together with Icefang Quaddle is quite powerful as well. Like, I think Icefang Quaddle is a very, that's a very win for the archetype that hasn't existed before. I am fairly certain, looking at the deck list, that the deck list can be optimized. Like, I'm not even sure that deck should have opposition in it. But on the other hand, I'm not, naive enough to believe that having played 0 games with the deck, I have any idea how it should be constructed. I think this is just proof that the archetype probably works. And someone needs to sit down and do some work to figure out what the right 75 is for it.
Yeah, it looks a little like the numbers look a bit all over the place, right? I never thought about cutting opposition, but he's only running 2 opposition in the first place, so maybe that's really just another way to close out the game on top of the 2 natural orders, and make use of I guess it's the fair mid-range breaker, because it cannot be Abrupticate, and when you get it down and you ever untap with it, you don't even need to untap with it, right? You're probably gonna take the game, so that's a nice way. I could actually see them going out every once in a while. But yeah, that's an exciting deck. If you're looking for spies, definitely check out what Gaël was playing in Eternal Weekend against HJ.
And by the way, both Maximilian and I got crushed by Carpet of Flowers. I think the first thing I would do with that list is there's 2 Carpet of Flowers in there, and Carpet of Flowers is crazy, and that deck should have more Carpet of Flowers because, like, I mean, oh lord, when that deck starts full of 3 and 4 mana Haymaker starts Carpet of Flowering you, like it's that's horrible. It's really horrible.
Yeah, when you have a ton of value in your deck, right, Carpet of Flower is going to be insane. That's also has been my approach to my elves lists. When I build them to be very grindy and mid-rangey in games 2 and 3, I would also always have like 2 Carpet of Flowers because that card is going to give you so much leverage, and it even allows you to side out some of your mana dorks, which will sometimes die to mass removal. And Carpet of Flowers, I used to say, is like a hasty Lanobar elf that doesn't die to removal.
I mean, he had it against me on the play in game 2, and I think I was like, I was cold on turn 3, basically. On turn 3, he had like Oko, Teferi, and a bunch of dudes in play. I'm like Delver, right? If he plays that damn thing on turn 1, I am just cold. Like, I mean, and then we're back to the whole Force of Will discussion, right? Is that card so powerful that he should be keeping in Force of Will just to force through Carpet of Flowers?
Probably, right? In speaking of powerful cards, just as we were preparing the episode, there was a spoiler for the new set, Theros, what's it called? Beyond Death. And the card that we're talking about is Underworld Breach. It's an enchantment, a colorless and a red. It reads, each non-land card in your graveyard has Escape. The Escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost, plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. And on top of that, at the beginning of your end step, you have to sacrifice it. So you can basically use it the turn it comes down. And it allows you to cast any card from your graveyard by paying the mana cost and exiling 3 cards. That card thus far looks a little bit crazy. When I initially saw it, I thought like, oh my god, this is going to break Legacy in half. Now I'm not so sure anymore, but it certainly has a ton of potential. People are still undecided on whether you can flashback Lotus Blooms and Ancestral Visions with it, but it's very likely you can't. But apparently, like, even after asking some higher level judges, they're like, okay, this construct of having escape costs plus something on top has never existed before. So we don't know, but it's very likely it's not going to work on Lotus Blooms. But something you can still do, and that was basically the talk of the town on Twitter thus far, you can use Lions or Diamond and Brain Freeze to pretty much win on the spot. So you would crack LED, have Brain Freeze in your graveyard. You can even, if you have the cards in your graveyard, you can just like replay LED and then Brain Freeze yourself, for example, or you can set it up in many different ways. The thing is, once you get to Brain Freeze and LED, you can generate a storm count that's high enough to basically outright Brain Freeze your opponent. And even if they have something like Emrakul, if you have a single Surgical Extraction somewhere in your deck and you're going to mill your entire deck, you can even like take away their Eldrazi's. So there's like many ways you can construct this to be good. I don't know if an combo, if it's going to help the traditional combo deck. Some people brought it up as a card for Ruby Medallion Stompy, so maybe that's something. But I think the card has a lot of potential to do something broken, which I don't know is going to be good, but
Yeah.
it has potential.
Because it seems like Escape is essentially flashback,
It's not actually.
but no exile, right?
Yeah, it's more like Retrace.
Yeah.
Or like Retrace is probably the wrong way to put it as well, because the card actually comes into play, so it doesn't only exist on instant sorceries. It's more like, yeah, I almost want to say Unearth or something. So it's really hard to compare to anything because it's a pretty new mechanic. I think it already existed in the last set, I say. Some people told me they already played with it in Arena. But yeah, there's going to be potential. But I guess that's not the kind of Magic that HJ wants to play after talking to you for 1.5 hours. I get the vibe.
So this is basically like a passive play. Yeah, you're talking to the guy who's jamming, who will just jam Leylines of the Voids in his sideboard and kill the foolish buffoons running around with their new crazy combo tech. Like, I mean, this is Legacy. But your combo tech has to be fairly broken for it not to be shut down by something. Like the scary things in Legacy is when your crazy combo tech starts working with a grindy deck as well. that's where I start getting scared. I'm not necessarily so scared about combo getting another tool to play with.
Yeah, I feel like that was also been the thing for like when we had really crazy combo decks. For example, Doomsday. When Doomsday was a secret tier 1 deck like many moons ago in Legacy, it had a really strong grind plan that a lot of opponents were not aware of. But ever since that went away, I guess A&T still grinds pretty well compared to the Epic Storm, even though the Epic Storm, like the new version that Brian put out, has put up better numbers recently. Maybe that's just part of the marketing of the deck, that a lot of people picked it up. I've certainly played it against it a lot. But I guess the new Epic Storm really has legs. And that's also another reason why you should really put Deafening Silences in your sideboard. Like at least 3 copies, maybe even 4.
So here's a play I made against Togores on in the top 8. He did all his crazy stuff, and he gave me his Risklaw Talisman. I said no to his crazy stuff. I'm not crazy. I don't let him do that sort of thing. And then I tapped his Risklaw Talisman, and I found my Null Rod, and I played it.
How did you get a turn after he gave you a Swishclaw Talisman?
Oh, he thought he was being young and impetus, and thought he could just combo off. He didn't. No, it was actually a really interesting play because he plays Veil with just a Bayou open. He puts it on the stack. He has Badlands open, I think. And I have Force of Will, and 2 blue cards. And I sort of look at him for a while. One of them is Daze. I'm sort of trying to figure out if I should Daze it, which taps him down, and then hope he doesn't secretly have a whole bunch of Lotus Petals hidden somewhere, and enough mana. Or if I force it, or he's just trying to fake me and I should let it resolve. And I end up forcing it, somewhat... looking enough like a doubter that he thinks that I don't have something more than that, and then he tries and goes for it to try to nausea me, and then I get there, right? So.
Oh, okay, I see.
But the deck is really, really cold to Null Rod if you look at the deck list. They're playing Lotus Petals, Mox Opals, Lion's Eye Diamonds, Talismans. There must be 20 artifacts in there.
Yeah, it hits them really hard.
So next on there's also another card that just came out that I just saw.
Oh, which one is that? I actually didn't put it in the show notes.
Kanoros, Hound of Athos.
Oh, the Marius Hausmann card. Oh, I remember what it does.
So it's 1 black-white legendary creature Hound. Is a 3/3. It has Vigilance, Menace, and Lifelink. And Menace, I actually had to look it up because I couldn't remember. Can't be blocked except by 2 or more creatures. Creature cards in graveyards can't enter the battlefield, and players can't cast spells from graveyards. So it's a little black-white hate bear.
Yeah, what I heard people say about it is that they complained that it wasn't a human, which is a legit complaint, because if it was a human, it could actually find a slot in the human stack. And another thing people complained about is it having 3 toughness, because that means you can't recruit off the guard for it. So even if it wasn't a human, or I guess it is not a human, so if it had 1 less toughness, you could recruit off the guarded, and it might be a thing. But right now...
But then people would still complain that it dies to Lightning Bolt, and that, nobody's...
Yeah, we were talking about it in one of the Legacy chats, and it was brought up that in Legacy it's not really that big of a difference whether you have 2 or 3 toughness. Only against Thalia it might matter at the time. But whether you have 2 or 3 toughness, having 3 toughness can sometimes, for cards like this, actually be a downside, because you're really only going to die to Thalia, Forked Bolt, and then what? I don't even know. So that's the kind of card that's my good friend of the cast, Marius Hausmann, would really enjoy. I immediately sent it to him, and he was like, "Yes, this is what I want." But I think that card just suffers from being too mediocre. If I want to put it like that. I don't know. Do you see something in it that I don't see?
I like my graveyard hate cards to cost 0 mana or to be rest in peace.
And not 3 mana dogs?
And not 3 mana dogs.
Oh, hounds, I'm sorry.
That die to a stiff breeze and leave me dead before I get to cast them.
Can we quickly talk about how stupid it is that in Magic we have hounds and dogs? And I know that Maro has been pushing for unifying the canines, I want to say, but I mean, I don't get it. We have hounds and we have dogs. Like, what's the point?
I mean, I guess you can make the whole joke when you cast it, when you say, I let loose my dog of war.
Who let the dogs?
Release the hounds.
Is it dogs or dog if it has 3 heads? I don't know. I don't know how it is.
There's going to be somebody who's going to put Cavern of Souls on dog, and then they're going to try to cast their hound, and it's not going to work, and they're going to quit the game. That's what I see happening.
Lost a legacy player.
So yeah, maybe we move on. This has been like quite the cast. I really enjoyed it. This is also going to be the end of the year, and if I can really make it, like it's something like 2:30 in the morning, but I'm going to try to get it out in the next 12 hours so people can listen to it before the end of the year. And here our goal, like I don't want to call them resolutions, but more like our goals as people, streamers, content creators, legacy dominators in HJ's case for the next year, the year of Marit Lage 2020. Eric, why don't you go first?
So I've actually set a few goals for myself since it's the end of the year, it's the new year, and that was what people were doing on Twitter. So I've set a couple of stream goals, hoping to get 300 subs on my Twitter and on my Patreon. So like double my Patreon and more than that for my Twitter. So pretty
Twitch, you mean?
High. Yeah, sorry, for Twitch. Setting the bar pretty high, but not too high. I think it's attainable, and I'm hoping to do it. And also to qualify for a regional pro tour and to top 8 a Grand Prix. Those are my goals.
Legacy Grand Prix, or are you also going to tackle other ones?
Any Grand Prix. I'm going to be going to a bunch. I might go to Austin for Modern, but probably not. But I'm definitely going to go to Phoenix for Pioneer, so that's why I've been playing quite a bit of Pioneer right now. I'm gonna be playing whatever format the next GP is, and playing a lot of that format and trying my hardest. So
awesome. So good luck with that.
Thank you.
Matt, what are your professional and Magic goals for the next year? Is there anything you look forward to?
I look forward to going to a few continuing education conferences in warm places, because that's the way to do it. And I would also like to play more Magic just in general. Just kind of now that my life is a little bit more on track and a little bit more concrete, and that I'm leaving less for extended periods of time, I would love to play more Magic on the West Coast, and ideally maybe play some more Magic in Europe in 2020. You never know.
Yeah, how's the legacy on your island going?
It's very small, so basically not much. So tried to start some things up. We might start in the new year, maybe getting at least a testing group going. I think would be really good. But I may have to switch to a little Magic Online to get my fix.
Yeah,
it's quite sad.
I've been telling you.
Because these Black Border duels won't shuffle themselves.
Do you know how expensive summer basics are? It's absolutely absurd. I don't know if you still have them.
I do.
Oh, dude. Anyway, so good luck with that. I would love to see you back in Europe. Like when you were here 4 years ago, we had the most amazing time. And I'm also gonna introduce you to HJ because you haven't made HJ yet, and he's like one of. By the way, HJ, Niklas Holtman submitted one of the questions was that we didn't touch upon earlier. He asked when you guys will get drunk together again.
I actually haven't gotten drunk with him, and it was a.
Maybe he just thought you were drunk.
Yeah, I probably was. He was definitely trying to get me drunk, I think. He was, yeah. I think resisting Nicholas is one of the reasons I managed to win that tournament.
Oh, wow.
That was probably one of the challenges, the bigger challenges than the actual gameplay is not ending up drinking until quite a bit in with him and till 4 a.m. with him and Callum.
Oh, that sounds pretty sweet. So for me, what would be my goals for next year? Well, I feel like I've been saying this for the last 2 years straight, but I really want to find a better balance for content creation. It's I have a tendency to make myself do more than I should. Like I try to do as much as I can, which often is more than I should. If you get what I mean, like I really want to pick my things that I want to work on, and that's primarily the podcast as well as streaming, but I honestly, like, I can't tell you right now. I mean, that's the general idea of my resolution or my goal, that I want to find the right balance for me. I enjoy doing the podcast a lot. I enjoy streaming a lot. And I think I can balance that. But then I usually, there's stuff on top when we do RPL that we did for the last 3 months almost. That was incredibly, like, I can't say hard work, but a lot of work. Like, I think I gained something like 5 to 8 kilograms just because I basically at the beginning of it, I was like, okay, dude, don't stress. You're going to do this with Anorak and for the next 3 months, and you're going to make it work, and then it's going to be over, and then you can focus back on, like, living a good life. And I just feel like I have a tendency to be like, okay, let's just do it again. And at some point, you really got to figure out, like, hey, what's the balance that you're going to strike? I try to set a streaming regimen for myself where I'm like, okay, I'm going to stream, like, a league or 2 leagues, like, twice a week, which is already a lot of work, and then going to do the podcast every other week. But then there's always going to be something on top. And I really try to, like, balance my life and be like, okay, I'm not going to do as much as I can, even though it's going to pain me, because it's gonna be too much. And that's like that's not professional, right? I still have, like, my day job, but as a content creator, that's the balance I'm gonna try to find. And privately, well, Kenya has been doing really well. I'm super happy for how that's been working out. But I also would love to travel a little bit more again. Definitely want to hit the 40K in Missouri. Missouri is probably one of the last states I ever saw myself visiting. It's just like I didn't really associate anything with Missouri. But now I would love to go there. I got to know a lot of awesome people over there. And I also want to go back to East Asia. Southeast Asia, East Asia. It's, I don't know, the last time I was in China, in Beijing for the tournament, that has been one of my best experiences, I want to say, in my entire life almost. Going into detail would be, like, too crazy right now, but that has been absolutely amazing. And I think I came back as a changed human being almost. But
well, if you need a place to crash in Shanghai, then
awesome, man. Thank you. Oh, you're gonna say I know a good hotel that you can.
well, I am told that I have to register a guest with the police within 24 hours of them arriving.
Yeah, it's not that easy, actually.
Just letting you know that.
Like, technically, I think when Wilson and I arrived last year, we had to register with the police, and we ended up not doing it and be like, okay, we're just going to be daredevils and not register. And yeah, it worked out. I haven't registered with the police, at least that I know of, yet in Beijing. But yeah, HJ, what are your goals for next year as a Magic player? Like, you're not really a content creator, right? Unless I missed something. But, like, what are your goals for next year?
Yeah, I'm probably, Magic-wise, probably not so much. Given that I'm moving to China for work and I'm picking up a fairly ambitious job doing, let's say, a little more than what I'm used to, I think that's probably going to be my main focus for next year. Is how do I actually sort of have success with that, as well as just adjust to living in China, which is going to be quite different. I am hoping to hopefully I'll get to know the Chinese legacy scene fairly well, and hopefully we'll get to like each other. It would be nice if I can get to go to some of the Eternal weekends, so I'll make it over to a GP or two in the US and or Europe. So I'm hoping to get to do that, but I think honestly, mostly I think my level of ambition is going to be on the work side next year.
Okay, awesome. Is it going to be your first time in China? Actually, I never asked.
Yes, yeah, it's going to be my first time. So it's I don't exactly know what I signed up for. I guess I'll figure out when I land. They offered me the job and I said yes, and I'm coming. But no, it's going to be really great. It's a super good organization. So I'm really looking forward to working.
Awesome. Best of luck with that. And I can't let you leave because we actually promised that you would tell the Cavern of Souls story. Because a lot of people, like, I teased it in our channel, and I know it's a very long story. Maybe we can condense it a little bit. I think when you told it to me the first time, it was like almost half an hour. but can you get into the Cavern of Souls stuff?
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to tell it to you quickly. I think it's
you don't need to rush it. But basically, what is the setting? You played in a team tournament. Which kind of tournament was it?
Okay, so we're playing. So this is the team event in at the US Eternal Weekend this year, which is where having scrubbed out of the main event, this is my this is for the second year in a row my big sort of this is my hurrah moment. I'm playing with Brandon Chang and Eric Virgo again, second year in a row. Great guys. And we have somehow managed to win 4 matches of Magic, and we're in the last round. And we're playing de facto the finals, but it's in Swiss of the team event.
Yeah.
The winner gets free oversized Magic cards, and the loser gets a stack of tickets. So that's sort of, that's the setting. That's where we're at. We have after I'm the one playing modern because that is apparently my lot in life when playing team events is that the people I team with happen to be legacy players, and I'm the guy who can somewhat comfortably pilot something that is a little newer to date. And I'm playing against humans, and having seen the other guys finish fairly quickly, we are now in turns of me versus this humans player. And after some, let's just say, fairly rough shenanigans, we've cast cryptic commands like 4 turns in a row. We've top-decked and engineered explosives. We've basically gone from dead on board to we would have won this if this continues. But we're in time. And that's sort of the setting of where the story continues. So we're in time. This is the Swiss. This is winner gets the free paintings. Loser gets a bunch of ticks. And so now we sort of sit down with the opposing team, and we have to figure out how do we actually split this. Because, of course, if we just draw, there's no real official prize for drawing this event. So one of us has to win this, and we have to split
because
it.
The payout is going to be based on match points, right? So if you draw, nobody gets the oversized cards.
Exactly. If we draw, nobody gets the oversized cards. And the oversized cards are worth a fair bit of money. So, there's an incentive to do something here. This, by the way, is also a setting where we have, I think, 2 or 3 judges watching us once we get to this
Ready
stage.
to put you into jail.
Yes. So definitely one of those places. So, for the kids out there, this is not the spot for you to just say things. This is the spot for you to drag a judge away from the table and be very specific about what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say before you say anything. Right. So it's a little bit of high pressure. The judges are sort of looking at us and going, guys, can we wrap up this tournament, right? We're in time. We're after the 5 rounds. You kind of have to do something, right? And we're sort of sitting there trying to, and we sort of start up the negotiations around how we're going to split this, having clarified with the judges who very clearly told us we're allowed to do a split as long as it only includes the 3 oversized paintings and a stack of ticks. So we can split that any way we want to, as long as nothing else goes on the table, and as long as no randomness or any other way of deciding is introduced. All right. So that's sort of the setting. If that was just it, the story would be fairly boring. So what happens is then we having sat there and talked for like 10 minutes and gathering a little bit of a crowd around us, the tournament organizer comes up and goes, "Okay, guys, this is actually, we know this is kind of unusual, right? I mean, this is a prize that really, we get the feeling that really they would have liked to have had a playoff, but that was just not the way they announced the event. So they kind of wanted this to be a final. So they go, okay, guys, we'll record the match as a loss, but can you please just play it out? And then, whoever wins gets the paintings."
By the way, which paintings are we talking about here?
or oversized. Guys, it's a Mox Diamond, a Survival, and a Cavern of Souls.
Survival of the Fittest, oversized. You had me at that.
Yeah, there's a lot of oversized cards here.
Yeah, that's my jam.
Okay, so we're sitting there. That's the first thing that happens. At which point we look at each other as a team. We've been negotiating for like 10, 15 minutes at this point. We're like, okay, that's a fairly unfair way to end this, because if we do this, we know what's going to happen. I'm going to crush the poor son, and we're going to run away with the oversized paintings. But, the fair rules of Magic in the tournament has actually drawn this match. So that's a little, finicky to do. So we kind of disregard that. And we keep arguing for a while until we then reach the conclusion that finally one of our opponents comes up with the split, and this is sort of where the story gets interesting, to say, okay, and this, by the way, is my humans opponent, I just want to clarify here, is nobody really likes the card Cavern of Souls. Like, Cavern of Souls is a card that should not exist. I mean, it has all the wrong text on it, right? It casts creatures of 5 different colors of Magic. Who really wants to cast creatures, right?
I don't know about that.
That's not the kind of Magic we play Legacy for. It has the cards uncounterable on it, which is awful. So how about we just take, if we just get the cavern and we just chop the damn cavern up in half, then we can split the rest, and it's we get an oversized card each, we split the tickets, and it's all going to be beautiful, right? This is wonderful.
You actually agreed on that.
And we talk about it. We talked about it. We're like, hey, on second thought, we're burning money, but we'll do it fairly spectacularly, right? Because we can film it. We can make this a piece of content. This can get to be an event of, the time where we, with a box cutter just killed the Cavern of
the
Souls.
Nazis were burning
We can
books.
even
You guys
sell
are
it
like tearing
afterwards.
up Cavern of Souls, I see.
Yes, we can even sell this Cavern of Souls as the infamous Cavern of Souls that was cut up at, North American Eternal Weekend 2019. With, a link to the live stream and the videos and the Facebook references and, the bikini girls and all the jazz, right? It's going to be great.
Yeah, I can see it, yeah.
You can see this being a major.
I would actually pay for this type of content to be on my YouTube channel, yes.
See? So we can actually make profit out of this. It's not necessarily bad, right? Yeah. And we have both teams agreeing to this. It was wonderful. But the tournament organizer was so we got called over to the senior tournament organizer. So this is I think he's called Nick Cross. So the TO who's been talking to us so far goes, okay, let's just Daddy tells me that, guys, he would really, really, really like for you not to cut open this Cavern of Souls inside of his tournament hall. I mean, whatever you do outside, he cannot stop you, but please don't do it inside the tournament hall. And, there's kind of a connotation to, he doesn't say there'll be consequences. I don't think there will be consequences if we do it outside as well, but, he really does not like the idea, right?
Okay.
So then what happens? So the whole thing ends up with us going to him. And by the way, bear in mind that this whole scene has been going on for like 45 minutes at this stage.
And you still haven't submitted
so
your match result yet?
2 teams of 3 each.
And you still haven't submitted your match result yet?
Oh, the match slot was done earlier because after the first 20 minutes or so, the TO sort of came to a point where he said, okay, guys, can we just agree that we are going to be splitting this, record this as a draw, and send home the judges?
Okay.
Just depressurize this a little bit, right? Can we do that, guys? Do we know we're going to split this?
I see.
So we signed the match slip. Match slip was done. All right, so we go up to Nick, and the end of the story ends up being that the tournament organizer finally, sort of, after we're standing there, we're trying to argue our way. Spending the first 5 minutes trying to argue, how big of an event this is going to be when we cut it open, right? The Thane, the Twitter, the internet account, the bikini babes that are going to throw themselves at us. How awesome a promotional event this is going to be. And I think the more we talk about how awesome the promotional event is going to be, the more the TO sort of has nightmare pictures of this thing happening.
The guy must really like Kevin,
including maybe, I don't know, maybe Wizards having policy opinions on us cutting up a Cavern of Souls. I don't know. So the end of the story ends up being that they go, okay, guys, if we just give you both of the teams a Cavern of Souls, so each of you get a Cavern of Souls, can you please promise us not to burn anything and not cut it up, right? just please
That's
take one
insane,
each.
dude. The value.
The value. So we actually managed to increase the prize pool through that negotiation. Now, the worst thing is, having spent all of that time, like 45, 50 minutes negotiating, and like we'd gotten really used to the idea. I'm actually a little bit sad that we didn't get to cut up that Cavern of Souls.
You know what you should have done at that point? You should have threatened to cut the survival and the mocks. Be like, you know what? We're going to cut the survival.
You just keep extorting more and more out of it.
I just find it.
We're gonna burn this
maybe that's what we should have.
I just find it amazing.
I feel like that might have been a little bit uncivilized to the poor guy who's sitting there just trying to avoid creating a shitstorm in his tournament and like policy issues with Wizards.
I just find it amazing that there's this like super unique, awesome prize, which is like this oversized card, and then like after a while, eventually it's gonna be like, you know what, just like behind this shelf. We have another one, and who knows how many more. It's.
Yeah, it almost makes you wonder about that painting you win with Eternal Weekend. Like, do they just have another one lying around just for it?
Well, if anyone should know, you should know. You've won and sold plenty of those. At this point, you're like more like an art connoisseur. You're getting you're getting yourself involved in the international art trading or something. I don't know.
Oh, is that you make me sound like some sort of super dangerous international man of mystery, Julian. I
exactly. This is basically what this entire episode is meant to portray you like, and I think we did a pretty good job at that.
Oh yes. Yeah.
HJ, thank you so much for coming on, for hanging out with us. Like, it's super early in the morning for you too, right? These 2 hours, they just flew by. I'm really looking for. Actually, when are you gonna go to China? Am I gonna still see you like anytime soon in European tournaments, or are you gonna fly out to China soon?
5th of January, and then I have for the first month or so I have a strict travel ban while I am getting my residence permit in place, and Lord knows what happens after. Like, I literally have a visa that has, I don't think it allows me to exit the country.
You're actually trapped. That's a kind of.
I am actually trapped.
Don't do anything wrong.
Send help, he says.
Yeah, I hope to. I hope the government will not take offense at me or any of the things that I've told.
Yeah.
So for the public, I love China. Wonderful country. Please receive me.
Yeah, I don't know if that's gonna work. But yeah, thanks a lot for coming on. Some shout outs to our biggest supporters on Patreon right now. We got Matt Nimes, Valerio, and James Legg on the Eternal Witness tier. And of course, our long supporters, Bachubat, Scott Monroe, Kurush, Alistay, and Jeremy Gates, who are supporting us on the Grizzlebrand tier. Thank you so much. Thanks for everyone tuning in, supporting us, even just like hanging out with us and Discord, which is super amazing, or spreading the word about our podcast. We've been doing this for 1.5 years now. I think 1.5 years ago, we decided, okay, we really want to run this podcast every other week. And your support has played a big role in allowing us to actually make the room and the time to make that work. So thanks a lot for that. If you want to support us in other ways, spread the gospel. At Eternal MTG is our Twitter account. I think we might be the largest legacy No, actually, we're not the largest legacy podcast. Of course,
we're definitely the longest.
Yes, that's actually true. We've been around for 6 years now, even though we had years where we only released like 5 episodes. But yeah, we've been around. But no, I want to say, if you want to support us, you can, of course, do that on Patreon, patreon.com/everydayeternal. Or if you want to do something else, something that also helps us out quite a lot is if you go to iTunes and you leave a review on iTunes. Preferably 5 stars if you think we are worth of that, because that actually makes it easier for people to find us. So if you think more people should be listening to this, head to iTunes, leave a review, and that's actually going to help a lot with the search algorithm, I was told. So just mentioning that.
And leave more comments about what decks you think I should be playing, if it's not NECFIT.
Matt, if we can actually convert you to a brainstorming, pondering, swords to plowsharing, snapcastering, chase activating mage, that would be the biggest transformation I've ever witnessed in any player ever. That would be something.
But then I'd have to rebuy Tundras, and those are expensive now.
Says the guy who's got like how many summer basic lands? Let's not get into that.
So Matt, think about Mystic Sanctuary, right? Think about all of the. I'm sure if I know you well, you have some fairly broken sorceries lying around somewhere in your stack.
I do.
Think about casting them twice.
See?
I was casting Painful Truth with Eternal Witness before you were even in on the
And now
shit.
imagine if
just
Eternal
saying.
Witness was just a land drop almost.
Just your fetch land. Your fetch land becomes Eternal Witness.
Now
Think about that for
you
me.
had me at hello.
So guys, we're going to wrap it up with that. This has been our longest episode ever. Really, really enjoyed myself. Once again, thanks a lot, everyone, for coming on. And see you again next year. Have a great New Year celebration. Have a great start into the new year. Enjoy yourself. Have a good time. And keep casting those legacy cards. Bye-bye. See ya.
And here's to another decade of legacy
Support. Hey, let's go. Let's do it.